The great courtroom of the Galactic Union floated high above the shining world of Atheron. It was the largest courtroom in the known galaxy. Thousands of alien leaders sat in massive rows that stretched farther than the eye could see. Military commanders, planetary rulers, scientists, diplomats. Even powerful emperors had traveled across space to witness the trial. Millions more watched through live broadcasts. Every screen across thousands of worlds showed the same image. A human standing alone in chains. His name was Ethan Cole. He looked older than most people expected. His dark hair had turned gray in several places. His face carried the marks of a hard life, yet despite the chains around his wrists, he stood quietly. He did not beg, he did not protest, he simply waited. The silence inside the courtroom felt heavy. Everyone knew why they were there, for years. Stories about Ethan Cole had spread across the galaxy. Some called him a kidnapper, others called him a criminal. A few even called him the most dangerous human alive, because many years ago, Ethan had taken something that did not belong to him. Or at least that was what the Galactic Union claimed. He had taken a child, not an ordinary child, an alien child. A child feared by every major government. A child powerful enough to change the fate of entire civilizations. At the center of the courtroom stood the High Council. 12 judges watched from a raised platform made of silver crystal. The oldest judge slowly stood. His voice echoed across the chamber. Today, we conclude the most important trial in modern history. Thousands listened carefully. The judge continued. Ethan Cole is accused of illegally taking possession of Subject Zero and hiding her from lawful authorities for many years. The words caused quiet whispers to spread through the audience. Subject Zero. Even hearing the name made aliens uncomfortable. The judge raised a hand. The whispers stopped immediately. Before final judgment is given, one final witness will speak. Every eye turned toward a massive doorway at the far end of the courtroom. The enormous doors slowly opened. The room became completely silent. A young alien woman entered. She walked calmly into the chamber. Nobody dared speak. Nobody dared move. Even the soldiers standing guard looked nervous. She appeared young, almost like a teenager by human standards. Her silver hair flowed behind her. Her glowing blue eyes seemed brighter than stars. She wore no crown, no royal clothing, no military uniform. She needed none of those things. Everyone already knew who she was, Subject Zero. The child feared across the galaxy, the living weapon. The girl who could destroy entire fleets. The girl many believed was the most powerful being alive. As she walked forward, countless memories filled the minds of those watching. Wars ended because of her. Governments changed because of her. Entire empires feared her name. Yet today she looked strangely calm. The young woman stopped in the center of the courtroom. The chief judge looked down at her. Subject Zero. Her eyes narrowed slightly. She clearly disliked that name. The judge continued anyway. You have been called here to answer a simple question. The courtroom remained silent. Millions watching from distant worlds leaned closer to their screens. The judge spoke slowly. Where does your loyalty belong? Nobody breathed, nobody blinked, everyone waited. Many expected her to choose the Galactic Union. Others expected her to choose her own people. Some believed she would choose herself. The answer could change the future of the galaxy. For several seconds she said nothing. Then she began walking, one step, then another. Her footsteps echoed across the massive chamber. She walked past military leaders, past governors, past kings, past scientists. Every person she passed watched nervously. Nobody knew what she intended to do. The judges exchanged worried looks. The young woman continued forward. Closer and closer to the prisoner section, closer and closer to Ethan Cole. The human remained still. For the first time, emotion appeared on his face. His eyes softened. The alien woman finally stopped directly in front of him. The entire courtroom stared. The galaxy stared. No one understood what was happening. Then something unexpected happened. Tears appeared in the young woman's eyes. A shocked murmur spread through the audience. Many people had seen her destroy warships. Many had seen her stand against armies. Nobody had ever seen her cry. The silence became almost unbearable. The chief judge leaned forward. "Answer the question." The young woman never looked away from Ethan. Her voice was soft, almost a whisper, yet every microphone in the chamber carried the word across the galaxy. "Dad." For 1 second, nobody reacted. The word seemed impossible. The judges froze. Military commanders stared in disbelief. Reporters forgot to speak. The entire courtroom became motionless. Then the silence spread beyond the chamber. Across colonies, across stations, across worlds, across the entire galaxy. Because the most powerful alien alive had just looked at an ordinary human prisoner and called him only one thing: Dad. And in that moment, the entire galaxy fell silent. 16 years earlier, the outer edges of human space were cold, dark, and mostly forgotten. Few ships traveled that far from the busy trade routes. Fewer still stopped there willingly. The region was filled with dead stations, broken satellites, and drifting wrecks left behind by old wars. Most people called it the graveyard belt. Ethan Cole called it work. His small salvage ship, Iron Star, moved slowly through a field of floating debris. The old vessel shook every few seconds as its engines struggled to stay active. Nothing about the ship looked impressive. Paint peeled from its metal walls. Several lights flickered constantly. The cargo bay door only worked when Ethan kicked it twice, but it was home. And for a man trying to survive alone, that was enough. Ethan sat in the pilot's seat, studying a scanner screen. The display showed hundreds of broken objects drifting nearby. Old engines, destroyed cargo containers, pieces of forgotten ships, nothing valuable, he sighed. 3 days of searching, and almost nothing worth selling. At this rate, he would barely earn enough credits to buy fuel. Then a warning light suddenly flashed. Ethan frowned. The scanner had detected something unusual. A ship, but not a human ship. The signal appeared ancient, almost hidden beneath layers of interference. He adjusted the controls. The image slowly became clearer. His eyes widened. The vessel was enormous, at least 4 times larger than anything he had ever salvaged. Its dark metal hull floated silently among the debris. Strange symbols covered its surface, symbols Ethan had never seen before. "Now that's interesting," he muttered. The databases could not identify the design. That alone made it valuable. Collectors paid huge amounts for unknown technology. A small smile appeared on Ethan's face. For the first time all week, luck seemed to be on his side. The Iron Star carefully approached the wreck. As he moved closer, the damage became visible. Huge sections of the vessel had been torn apart. Entire decks were exposed to space. Scorch marks covered the outer hull. Something terrible had happened here. Something violent, yet one thing felt strange. Most wrecks were silent, dead empty. This ship was different. A faint energy reading still appeared on the scanners. Very weak but active, Ethan felt a small knot form in his stomach. Power meant risk. Still, curiosity pushed him forward. After securing his suit, he entered the airlock. Minutes later, he floated through a massive breach in the alien hull. Darkness surrounded him. His helmet light cut through the shadows. The interior looked abandoned. Broken machinery hung from walls. Damaged cables floated through the air. Fragments of shattered glass drifted everywhere. Ethan carefully moved deeper inside. The silence felt unnatural, almost as if the ship were watching him. He shook the thought away. Old wrecks often made people imagine strange things. Then he noticed something, a door. Unlike everything around it, this door remained sealed. Its surface looked untouched by the destruction. Even more surprising, faint blue lights glowed around its edges. Power, real power, still functioning after who knew how many years. Ethan approached slowly. The control panel beside the door flickered weakly. Most of the symbols meant nothing to him. But one button remained illuminated. He hesitated. Years of salvage work had taught him an important lesson. Never open a door unless you are ready for what is behind it. Unfortunately, curiosity usually won. He pressed the button. For several seconds nothing happened. Then the massive door slowly slid open. Cold air rushed past him. His helmet light entered the room first. At first he saw only darkness. Then rows of broken containment chambers appeared. Some had shattered, others looked melted from the inside. The entire room resembled a laboratory, a very advanced laboratory. Ethan moved carefully between the damaged chambers. Something about the place made him uncomfortable. The room felt wrong, as if terrible things had happened here. Then he heard it, a sound so soft he almost missed it. A tiny whimper. Ethan froze. His heartbeat quickened. He listened carefully. The sound came again. A frightened cry, not an animal, not a machine, a child. He slowly turned toward the far corner of the room. Partially hidden behind fallen equipment stood a small containment pod. Unlike the others, this one remained intact. Its glass surface was cracked but unbroken. The life support system still worked weakly, but they worked. Ethan stepped closer. Then his breath caught. Inside the pod sat a child, a little alien girl. She looked no older than 6 or 7. Silver hair covered part of her face. Her thin arms wrapped around her knees. She was trembling, terrified, hungry, alone. For a moment neither moved. The child stared at him with large glowing blue eyes, eyes filled with fear. The kind of fear that came from being alone for far too long. Ethan slowly knelt beside the pod. He raised his empty hands to show he meant no harm. "It's okay," he said softly. The girl flinched, but she did not run. She simply watched him, as if trying to decide whether he was another monster. Then Ethan noticed something written on the side of the pod. Most of the symbols were alien. But one line had been translated into several known languages, including English. The words made his blood run cold. Subject 0 warning. Extreme threat Levaldo not. Release under any circumstance. Ethan looked back at the small frightened girl. She pressed herself against the glass, looking less like a weapon and more like a child who had been forgotten by the universe. Far away, somewhere deep inside the dead ship, a warning alarm suddenly activated, and for the first time, Ethan realized he might not be alone aboard the wreck. The alarm echoed through the dead ship. A sharp metallic sound filled the dark corridors. Ethan immediately stood up. Every instinct told him to leave. Old wrecks did not suddenly activate alarms without a reason. Something had triggered the system. The question was what, or who, for a moment. He looked toward the exit. His salvage ship was still waiting outside. He could leave now, forget everything he had seen. Forget the strange laboratory. Forget the warning label. Forget the child. It would be safer, much safer. Then he looked back at the containment pod. The little girl was staring at him. Fear filled her glowing blue eyes. She looked like someone expecting to be abandoned again. Ethan knew that look. He had seen it years ago in refugee camps after the border wars. Children waiting for parents who would never return. Children hoping someone would choose them. The little alien girl looked exactly the same. The alarm continued screaming through the ship. The child suddenly covered her ears and squeezed her eyes shut. She looked terrified. Ethan made his decision. He stepped toward the control panel beside the pod. "I don't know what you are," he said quietly, "but nobody deserves to be left here alone." The control screen flickered weakly. Most of the alien symbols meant nothing to him. Fortunately, one command had been translated. Emergency release. Ethan stared at the button. The warning label flashed in his mind. Extreme threat level. Do not release under any circumstances. He hesitated. Then he pressed it. The pod released a long hiss. Blue lights flickered, mechanical locks opened one by one. Finally, the glass door slowly slid aside. The little girl immediately moved backward, pressing herself against the rear wall. She was still afraid. Ethan remained where he was. Giving her space. "It's okay," he said. "You don't have to come out if you don't want to." The girl said nothing. Several long seconds passed, then she carefully stepped forward. Her movements were slow, cautious, like a wild animal approaching a stranger. When her small feet touched the floor outside the pod, she nearly collapsed. Ethan caught her before she hit the ground. The child froze, her eyes widened, as if nobody had ever helped her before. For a moment neither moved, then something unexpected happened. The little girl grabbed the front of his suit and refused to let go. Ethan blinked. The child was shaking, not from fear this time. From exhaustion, she was starving minutes later. Ethan carried her through the corridors toward the exit. The alarm continued sounding around them, but something else worried him more. The laboratory records. Before leaving, he had copied several files from the ship's database. Now he quickly checked them through his wrist computer. The results made him stop walking. Subject 0, female, age unknown, status, experimental asset. Then came hundreds of restricted documents. Most were heavily damaged. But one sentence appeared repeatedly, again and again. Potential threat exceeds planetary level. Ethan frowned. Planetary level? That made no sense. No child could be that dangerous. The little girl sleeping against his shoulder certainly did not look dangerous. She looked tired, thin, and lonely, yet the warnings continued. Every file described her as a weapon. Never as a person, never as a child, just a weapon. A sudden explosion shook the corridor. Ethan nearly lost his balance. His scanner instantly activated. A signal had appeared nearby, then another and another. 3 ships, no, 5 ships. Approaching the wreck, fast, his stomach tightened. Someone else had found the ship, and they were heading directly toward it. "That's not good," Ethan muttered. He increased his pace. Minutes later, he reached the Iron Star. The airlock sealed behind them. The old ship immediately launched away from the wreck. Through the cockpit window, Ethan watched several dark vessels emerge from hyperspace. None carried identification signals. That alone was suspicious. The unknown ship surrounded the wreck almost immediately, as if they already knew exactly what they were searching for. Ethan silently powered down several systems. The last thing he wanted was attention. Fortunately, the larger vessels ignored him. Their focus remained on the alien ship. After several tense minutes, the mysterious fleet disappeared inside the wreck. Only then did Ethan breathe again. Whatever was happening, he wanted no part of it. His attention shifted toward the small medical bed behind him. The child was awake. She sat quietly beneath a blanket, watching everything, still saying nothing. Ethan opened a food container and carefully handed it to her. The reaction shocked him. The little girl grabbed it immediately. She ate as if she had not seen food in weeks, maybe months. Within seconds, the meal was gone. Then she looked at him, still hungry. Ethan gave her another package. Then another. The child finished everything. For the first time, some color returned to her face. A small smile almost appeared. Almost. Ethan sat nearby. "Do you have a name?" he asked. The girl tilted her head. Clearly confused, he pointed toward himself. "Ethan." Then he repeated it. "Ethan." The child studied him carefully. After several seconds, she pointed toward him and softly said, "A." Then the word came out awkwardly. Broken, but understandable. Ethan smiled. "That's right." The little girl seemed fascinated by his reaction, as if praise was something completely new to her. Then he pointed toward her. "What about you?" The child became silent. Her expression changed. Confusion, then sadness. Slowly she shook her head. She did not know. She had no name, The realization hit Ethan harder than expected. Someone had created her, experimented on her, locked her inside a laboratory, yet nobody had even given her a name. Only a number, only a designation, Subject 0. For a long moment, Ethan looked at the child. Then he made a decision. Everyone deserves a name, he said. The little girl watched him closely. Outside the ship, distant stars drifted past. Unaware that across the galaxy, secret fleets were already beginning their search. Because the child now sitting inside Ethan's ship was not merely a survivor. She was the reason entire governments had been hunting for years. And neither of them yet understood that the moment Ethan opened that pod, the fate of the galaxy had quietly begun to change. The stars drifted quietly outside the Iron Star. Inside the small salvage ship, Ethan sat across from the little alien girl. For the first time since finding her, there was no alarm, no explosions, no danger pressing against the walls, just silence. The child sat wrapped in a blanket. Holding an empty food container, she watched Ethan carefully. Every movement he made seemed to interest her, almost as if she was trying to understand what kind of person he was. Ethan understood one thing already. The girl had spent most of her life trapped inside that laboratory. Simple things were completely new to her. Food, freedom, conversation, kindness. She looked at everything with curiosity, as though she had been born yesterday. Ethan leaned back in his chair. "You need a name," he said. The little girl tilted her head. She did not fully understand. Ethan pointed toward himself. "Ethan." Then he pointed toward her. "Name." The child thought for several seconds. Then she slowly shook her head. The gesture carried something painful behind it. She truly had no name. Not even one. No family name, no nickname, nothing. Only Subject 0. A label. A number. A warning. Ethan hated it. No child should grow up as an experiment. No child should be treated like an object. The little girl watched him closely, waiting, trusting him more than she probably should. Then an idea appeared. Ethan looked through the cockpit window, far away. Countless stars shined against the darkness. One star in particular glowed brighter than the others. Its soft silver light reminded him of the child's eyes. A small smile appeared on his face. "I think I have one," he said. The little girl blinked. Ethan pointed toward her. "Lyra." The child stared at him. He repeated it. "Lyra." The word sounded gentle, warm, human, not a code number. Not a laboratory designation, a real name. The girl looked uncertain at first. Then she pointed at herself. "Lyra?" Ethan smiled. "Yes, Lyra." For a moment she simply sat there, testing the word in her mind, as if trying to understand what it meant. Then something happened. The smallest smile appeared on her face. The first real smile Ethan had seen. It lasted only a second. But it was enough. For the first time, she looked less like a frightened experiment and more like a child. The sight made Ethan strangely happy. He had not expected that. After all, he barely knew her. Yet somehow he already felt responsible for her. As though leaving her alone again would be impossible, hours passed. The Iron Star continued moving deeper into human territory. Ethan hoped the distance would keep them safe. Unfortunately, the galaxy had other plans. A warning signal suddenly flashed across the cockpit. Ethan immediately frowned. An incoming transmission. Encrypted, unknown source. That was never good. He opened the message. A distorted face appeared on the screen. The figure wore dark armor. Its species was difficult to identify. Only its glowing yellow eyes were visible. The stranger spoke immediately. "We know what you took from the research vessel." Ethan felt his stomach tighten. His hand moved closer to the communication controls. The stranger continued. "Return Subject 0, and you will not be harmed." Behind him, Lyra became very still. She understood the name. Or rather, the number. Her expression changed instantly. Fear returned to her eyes, Ethan noticed, and suddenly felt angry, not afraid, angry. Whoever these people were, they had already hurt this child enough. "I don't know what you're talking about," Ethan replied. The stranger's eyes narrowed. "Human, this is your only warning." The transmission ended. The cockpit fell silent. Ethan slowly exhaled. That was bad, very bad. Someone had tracked them already. And if one group found them, others would follow. He turned toward Lyra. The little girl looked frightened again. Her hands trembled slightly. Ethan knelt beside her. "Hey," he said softly. "It's okay." She looked at him, unsure, like she wanted to believe him but didn't know how. Then she quietly asked her first complete question. "Take Lyra back?" The words were broken, simple but clear. Ethan's heart sank. That was what she feared most. Being returned, being locked away again, being treated like a weapon instead of a child. He shook his head immediately. "No." Lyra stared at him. Ethan kept his voice calm. "I'm not taking you back." The little girl searched his face, looking for any sign of a lie. Finding none, some of the fear disappeared. Not all of it, but enough. Then she did something unexpected. Very carefully, very slowly, she moved closer and sat beside him, not because she had to, because she wanted to. It was a small action. Yet it meant everything. Trust. The first real trust she had ever given someone. Ethan smiled. For a while neither spoke outside. The stars continued passing by. Inside, the ship felt warmer than before. But far away, hidden beyond known space, dozens of encrypted messages were already spreading across the galaxy. Subject Zero had been found. Secret organizations received the news. Military leaders received the news. Scientists received the news. Hunters received the news. And each one wanted the same thing, the child. Some wanted to control her. Others wanted to study her. A few wanted to destroy her. None of them cared what she wanted. None of them cared that she now had a name. But they would soon learn something important. Subject Zero was disappearing. Because a frightened little experiment no longer existed. Now there was only Lyra, and for the first time in her life, someone was willing to protect her, no matter the cost. 3 days later, the Iron Star landed on a small mining colony called Black Ridge Station. The station sat on the surface of a cold gray moon near the edge of human territory. It was not an important place. No famous leaders lived there. No wealthy traders visited. Most people across the galaxy had never even heard its name. That was exactly why Ethan chose it. People searching for Lyra would look in powerful cities, military bases, research worlds, not a forgotten mining colony full of tired workers. As the ship touched down, Lyra pressed her face against the cockpit window. Her glowing blue eyes widened. She had never seen a settlement before. Hundreds of small buildings stretched across the rocky surface. Mining vehicles moved slowly between work zones. Workers walked through the streets carrying equipment and supplies. To most people, the station looked boring. To Lyra, it looked incredible. She stared at everything, every vehicle, every building, every person. The excitement on her face made Ethan smile. "You've never seen a town before, have you?" he asked. Lyra slowly shook her head. The answer was obvious. She had spent her entire life inside a laboratory. The galaxy outside those walls was completely new to her. A few minutes later, they stepped out of the ship. Cold air rushed across the landing platform. Lyra immediately grabbed Ethan's jacket. Not from fear, from uncertainty. Everything around her felt unfamiliar. The sounds, the people, the movement. She stayed close to him as they walked toward the market district. Several workers glanced at the strange child, but nobody paid much attention. Children from many species lived on Black Ridge. One more was nothing unusual. For the first time since finding her, Ethan felt slightly relaxed. Maybe they could stay here for a while. Maybe Lyra could finally experience a normal life. The thought disappeared moments later, because normal life was something Lyra had never known. And she wanted to experience all of it. The market became their first challenge. The moment they entered, Lyra stopped walking. Her eyes became enormous. Colorful lights hung above the streets. Vendors sold food from dozens of worlds. Music played from nearby shops. People laughed and talked around them. The little girl looked completely overwhelmed. Then she pointed toward a small food stand. "Ethan?" He followed her gaze. The stand sold simple sweet bread. Nothing special, yet Lyra stared at it as though it were treasure. Ethan laughed softly. "You want some?" She nodded immediately. Moments later he handed her a warm piece of bread. Lyra examined it carefully, then took a bite. The reaction was priceless. Her eyes widened. Her entire face lit up. She quickly took another bite, then another, as though she had discovered the greatest thing in the universe. Ethan could not stop smiling, for someone who had seen so little of life. Every new experience felt magical. For the next hour, Lyra explored the market like an excited child discovering a new world. Which, in a way, she was. She stared at colorful toys, watched street performers, listened to music, asked endless questions using the limited words she knew. Everything fascinated her. Everything except one thing: people. Whenever strangers came too close, she immediately stepped behind Ethan. The laboratory had taught her to fear others. Trust would take time, a lot of time. As the sun began setting beyond the colony dome, Ethan decided to rent a small apartment. The building was old, the furniture was worn. The walls needed repairs, but it was safe, and most importantly, it was private when they entered. Lyra looked around curiously. There was a small kitchen, a living area, 2 bedrooms, nothing impressive. Yet she stood completely still. "Ethan?" She asked softly, "What is it?" She pointed around the room. "This?" For a moment he did not understand. Then realization appeared. She had never seen a home before. Not a real one, only containment cells. Laboratories, testing rooms, places designed to hold her. Never a place designed for living. Ethan looked around the apartment, then back at her. "It's a home," he said. Lyra remained silent. The word seemed unfamiliar. "A home?" She repeated. Ethan nodded. "A place where people live." The little girl slowly walked through the room, touching chairs, tables, walls, trying to understand. Then she entered one of the bedrooms. A simple bed stood beside a small window, nothing special. Yet Lyra stared at it for several seconds. "Ethan?" "Yeah? Mine?" The question hit him harder than expected. Such a simple question, yet there was so much emotion behind it. As if she could not believe something belonged to her. As if nobody had ever given her anything before. Ethan smiled. "Yes." "Lyra," the little girl looked at the bed again. Then at him, then back at the bed. A slow smile appeared on her face, bigger than any he had seen before. That night, after dinner, Ethan checked his communication systems one last time. His expression immediately darkened. Several encrypted signals had appeared near the colony. Unknown ships, unknown origins, moving through nearby space. Searching, his stomach tightened. They had found the trail again. Whoever was hunting Lyra was getting closer. Much closer. Ethan quietly shut off the display. Across the room, Lyra had already fallen asleep, curled beneath a blanket, for the first time in her life. Inside a real home, looking at her peaceful face, Ethan made a silent promise. He would not let anyone take that away from her. No matter who came, no matter how powerful they were. Because outside the colony, hidden among the stars, the hunters were closing in, and they were far more dangerous than either of them realized. The next morning began peacefully, for the first time since finding Lyra. Ethan almost felt normal. The small apartment was quiet. Sunlight from the colony dome shined through the windows. The smell of breakfast filled the room. Everything seemed calm, safe, ordinary. Lyra sat at the kitchen table, swinging her feet beneath the chair. A half-eaten piece of sweet bread rested in front of her. She looked happier than Ethan had ever seen. Every few minutes she glanced around the apartment, as if making sure it was still real. As if she feared the home might disappear if she looked away for too long. Ethan smiled every time he noticed. Then a loud knock struck the front door. Both immediately froze. The room became silent. A second knock followed, much harder this time. Ethan slowly stood. His instincts screamed that something was wrong. Nobody visited this early. Especially not people he knew. Lyra's smile vanished. Fear instantly returned to her face. Without saying a word, she moved closer to Ethan. The sight alone told him everything. Whoever stood outside, she was afraid of them. Ethan quietly approached the door and checked the security screen. His stomach tightened. 3 figures stood outside, all wearing dark uniforms. None carried colony markings. None belonged there. The tallest figure stepped closer to the camera. "We know the child is inside," he said. His voice was calm, almost friendly. That somehow made him even more dangerous. Ethan did not respond. The stranger continued. "You are protecting property that does not belong to you. Property. Not child, not girl, property." Ethan felt anger rise inside him. Behind him, Lyra lowered her eyes. As if she had heard that word many times before, the stranger spoke again. "Open the door, and this will remain peaceful." Ethan switched off the screen. His answer was obvious. A loud crash echoed through the apartment seconds later. The front door exploded inward. Metal fragments flew across the room. Lyra jumped in fear. 3 armed agents entered immediately. Their movements were fast, professional, clearly trained for this mission. The leader's eyes locked onto Lyra. "There she is," he said. The words made Ethan's blood boil. Not a child, not a person, just a target. The agents stepped forward. Ethan moved directly between them and Lyra. "You're not taking her," he said. The leader sighed. As expected, one of the agents raised a weapon. Not a gun, a stun device, designed to disable without killing. At least that was the plan. The agent fired. A bright pulse shot across the room. Everything happened in less than a second. Ethan barely had time to react. Then something impossible occurred. The pulse stopped. Not missed, stopped, frozen in the air. Every person in the room stared in shock. The glowing energy remained suspended several feet from Lyra. As though time itself had paused, the little girl stood completely still, her eyes glowing brighter than ever before. The room suddenly became cold, very cold. The agents exchanged nervous looks. For the first time, fear appeared on their faces. The suspended energy pulse slowly crumbled into tiny particles, then vanished. Silence filled the apartment. Nobody moved, nobody spoke. The leader whispered one word. Impossible. But deep down, he knew exactly what was happening. The reports had been true. Every terrifying report. Every classified warning. Every secret file. Subject Zero was far more powerful than anyone had believed. The problem was that Lyra herself did not understand what she was doing. The glowing light around her intensified. Furniture began shaking. The walls vibrated. Glass cracked throughout the apartment. Fear filled her face. Not because of the agents, because of herself. "Ethan," she whispered. Her voice trembled. The energy surrounding her became stronger. The entire room shook violently. Outside, alarms suddenly activated across the colony. People stopped walking in the streets. Workers looked toward the apartment building. Unsure what was happening inside, the agents began backing away. Their confidence had completely disappeared. The leader slowly lowered his weapon. Years of training told him a terrible truth. If the child lost control, nobody inside this building would survive. Maybe nobody on the station would survive, Ethan. Lyra said again. Tears appeared in her eyes. The energy grew stronger. The floor cracked beneath her feet. She looked terrified. Like a child trapped inside a nightmare, and suddenly Ethan understood something important. The laboratory had never taught her how to live. It had only taught her how to be a weapon. Nobody had taught her how to control her power. Nobody had taught her how to handle fear. Nobody had cared. They had created something extraordinary, then abandoned her to face it alone. The realization made him furious. Not at Lyra, at the people responsible. Ethan slowly stepped toward her. The agents stared in disbelief. Human, stop. One shouted, get away from her. Ethan ignored them. Lyra looked at him through tears. The energy around her continued growing. Yet he kept walking, one step, then another, until he stood directly in front of her. The room trembled violently. The walls groaned. The agents retreated even farther, but Ethan simply knelt beside the frightened child, then placed a hand gently on her shoulder. It's okay, he said softly. The words were simple, nothing special, yet Lyra looked at him as though he had performed a miracle. No one is going to hurt you. The energy began weakening. Slowly, very slowly, the shaking stopped. The glowing light faded. The cracked walls became still. Within seconds, the apartment returned to silence. The agents stared in disbelief. They had expected a monster. Instead, they had witnessed something completely different. A scared child, one who only wanted someone she could trust. The leader finally understood why every attempt to capture her had failed. It was not her power that protected her. It was the human. And as he looked at Ethan shielding Lyra from danger, a frightening thought crossed his mind. If anyone tried taking the child away, the galaxy might discover exactly how dangerous she could become. Because for the first time in her life, Lyra finally had something worth fighting for. For several seconds after the energy faded, nobody moved. The apartment remained completely silent. The three agents stood frozen near the broken doorway, their weapons lowered, their confidence gone. The reports had warned them that Subject Zero was dangerous. What they had not expected was this: a frightened child crying in the middle of a damaged apartment, holding onto the sleeve of a human mechanic. One hand gently resting on her shoulder. He could feel her shaking, not from anger, not from power, from fear. The agents slowly exchanged looks. Their mission suddenly felt much more complicated. The leader finally stepped forward, carefully, slowly, as though approaching a wild animal. The leader glanced toward Lyra. Something had changed in his expression. For the first time, he was looking at her as a person instead of a weapon. Not completely, but enough. We were given orders, he continued. We were told she was a monster. His gaze remained fixed on the child. Within moments, the agents disappeared through the ruined doorway. The apartment became quiet once more, but Ethan knew the problem was far from over. More dangerous groups, people with larger armies and fewer doubts, people who would not leave peacefully. That afternoon, workers repaired the damaged apartment. The colony authorities asked questions. Ethan gave as few answers as possible. Most people accepted the story of a simple equipment accident. A few clearly suspected more, but nobody pushed the issue. By evening, the station had returned to normal. At least on the surface. Inside the apartment, however, he looked up from a repair tool. Yeah? Lyra hesitated, as if struggling to find the right words. Then she quietly asked, Monster? They say monster, she whispered. Her voice sounded small, fragile, like she already feared the answer. Transport ships crossed the night sky above the colony. For a while he said nothing, thinking carefully. Then he spoke. Do you know what a monster really is? Lyra slowly shook her head. A monster is someone who enjoys hurting people. Ethan smiled softly. Power doesn't make someone a monster. She looked at him, confused. Ethan pointed toward the stars outside. The room became quiet again. Lyra thought about his words, carefully, slowly. Finally she asked, Not monster? Ethan shook his head immediately. No, Lyra. The answer came without hesitation, without doubt. You are not a monster. Looking for signs of dishonesty, finding none, a small smile appeared. The fear in her eyes faded slightly. Then something unexpected happened. Lyra moved closer and leaned against his shoulder. The gesture surprised Ethan. The child rarely initiated physical contact. Not because she disliked it, because trust still felt unfamiliar. Yet now she remained there quietly, comfortably, safe. A rare gift in their increasingly dangerous lives. Then the communication terminal suddenly activated. A sharp beep echoed through the room. Ethan frowned. Nobody should have known how to contact him. He approached the screen and opened the transmission. His expression immediately darkened. The message contained no video, only text, one sentence. A black circle surrounded by silver stars. Ethan recognized it instantly. His blood ran cold. The symbol belonged to the Directorate, one of the most powerful organizations in the galaxy. An organization that controlled entire fleets, entire governments, entire worlds. If the Directorate was involved, everything had just become far worse. Much worse behind him, Lyra noticed his expression. What happened? She asked softly. Ethan stared at the message. Thinking, calculating, worrying. Then he looked back at the child. He deleted the message, then shut down the terminal completely. Lyra blinked, confused. Ethan smiled. A calm, determined smile. Nothing we can't handle, he said. The little girl smiled back. But far beyond Black Ridge Station, inside the hidden headquarters of the Directorate, dozens of powerful leaders were already studying her file, watching recordings, analyzing reports, preparing plans. And for the first time in many years, they all agreed on one thing. The hunt for Subject Zero had officially begun. And soon the entire galaxy would be searching for the little girl called Lyra.